it's a hump day, and I love hump day because it's just another little simple joy you can celebrate of being halfway through another week. I can't keep track of years, and I barely keep track of months nowadays, but I can keep track of the week, sort of. So hump days are still important and pivotal for that. It is Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. Where did all the time go? Oh boy. That's okay. Here we are, and the singing is fun, and so is the talking and communing. I have two guests to help us with a great focus on women's health and wellness, which, yes, I like anything, can cover so many things, and so we're going to get into as much of it as we can. These are two great friends that have been like easily a part of my guiding light the last couple of years through, being still in a pandemic, as they've just been great community in terms of health and wellness, and certainly here in our Zoom rooms, they've been here for a few conversations, and so I'm just super super grateful to have Toni and Amarachi back. Kind of like the quick of it is that Toni Junious is a part of Soultry Sisters, with Alyssa AJ Juniors, who's also a frequent friend and visitor of our Tough Talk space. And they are just they're everything in health and wellness for me. I have been so fortunate to be a part of their collective, as well as participate in an amazing wellness festival that they had earlier this summer. And so just super grateful for you to be here, Toni. Thank you so so much for being here. And Amarachi Crystal is also just like, I mean, I feel like you're just another part of the family, in so many great ways. She has an amazing podcast, Life by Amarachi podcast. She's also brilliant on care, especially for children, and has a great channel, Wise Child Cares. And she's also now also a certified life coach, which is just super super awesome. I mean, you're going and going, and that's also with Secure Life Coaching. And so you can find both of them on all of those different handles, on many different social media platforms, and we're going to get into some great health and wellness with it. But also, we're going to start with first just like checking in on how you are doing. I always like to say it's like, how are you in 2022? Because we all have our own relationships going on with time and space and everything as it is right now. I don't know if either of you would like to dive in first. You're both also coming in from the East Coast. Is that correct at this time? So, I mean, you guys are doing the double duty of late night hum night for me. Great.
Yes, I guess I'll chime in. So, hi, BJ, and everyone else joining. Hey, Amarachi. And so, just thank you for having me back. I guess, how am I feeling? Good. My word for this year was ease, and some things are more easeful than others, but I feel like I'm trying to lean into that as like this fall season starts. Like, I don't know, in the East Coast, when it gets cold, I'm not as like excited about it. So I'm trying to like slow down and like ground down and be okay with change, right? You mentioned that, BJ, like change is, natural. So that's something I'm embracing right now.
Change is it is a part of the flow, and it's sometimes the hardest thing to remember that it's a part of that flow. So I feel that. Thank you for that, and thank you again for being here. Amarachi, let me pass it to you. And how are you in 2022 doing?
Oh, hi. I'm so glad to be here. Good seeing your faces again. I feel like it was like yesterday that we saw each other, but I know it's been like almost a year or so. But no, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be on Talk Talk again. I've been maybe a couple of other talks here, but I'm glad to be back to have this conversation with everyone. But 2022, where did it go? Because I don't I'm like, what time is it? It's already October, like next week. But so it flew by, but similar to Toni, I've led into it with just intention, ease, and relaxation. And I've had a couple of hiccups here and there, but I always go back to that, especially intention for me. So it's like, no, I intend to take it easy. Like that's what I'm all about. So it's kind of been that way. And as the year is wrapping up, I'm feeling that a lot more while I'm dealing with other things and different shifts and changes. And it's funny, I'm gonna mention changes. in this topic today. So I'm really glad that I'm glad that I'm gonna find a way that it lines up with health. But yeah, I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
It all aligns as it always does. I'm gonna kick it right back to you on just like um, one of the things I want to also just sort of respond to what you're saying is that like one of the things I think I've learned the most from you that's been so much more to a benefit to me than like I ever even realized is regulating how much I'm resting and like being really mindful about regulating my rest. I try, particularly like with Tough Talk, it's like I sit there and would often just like stack a calendar. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do all this with it, and it's like I'd send out emails and it's like I've got like 8 meets in a month, and I still do this at times. I just did it, I think, with this past month where it was like, okay, we got like 6 or 7 sessions on the docket. Um, and then there are times when I have to meet the moment and I know that like I'm not in the space with the capacity that I need to like launch in and do a full thing. And it's only been recently that I've gotten better about being able to honor that and say, you know what, if I need to take that beat and say we're not going to have a full group session today, it's okay. It helped me learn it for myself, and so like I'm always so grateful to learning that from you. But that's where I want to take it right back to just like how is everything with podcasts? We just had another new episode drop, as well as with Wise Child and with Secure Life Coaching. Like how's all the functioning operations?
Yeah, it's a lot. Like when people call it out, I'm like, I am taking on a lot. But then for some reason, because I do prioritize the rest, it never feels like a lot to me. It really doesn't. Like I go with the flow of it. And like they're all my priorities, but I could always rearrange when I prioritize it in the moment. So I never forget that it's important to me. So that's kind of how I lead in with it. I was like, I love all of these things. They all could take time and I could kind of like take bounce around them. And for one, too, they all kind of align anyway, because the center of their core is mental health. Like my childcare business, which is Wise Child, I promote myself as a mental health nanny, so that's my selling point to the families that I take care of. So I lead in with that. And then the podcast is centered around mental health as well. So I have different conversations about all things that I deal with personally. And if I could find people like yourself and Toni and Toni's sister who could align with the message I want to sell to the podcast, then I will focus on that. But because we're all kind of aligned within health and wellness, that it makes it easy for me to kind of take care of that. And then I just stepped into the life coaching because it's been a long time where I was trying to figure out how to alternatively use my degree in psychology, because I'm not in my master's where I could practice, psychotherapy and all of that. So like, how can I still help and be within the mental health movement and still feel like myself, like I could be myself and all that. So through all of the growth of both, especially with the podcast, it kind of geared me into creating like Secure Life Coaching. And they're all doing pretty well. The podcast is coming back. At first, I had a freak out, like, I'm never going to do this again. I'm going to take a long hiatus. But now I'm like, I really just needed a freaking break. That's all I needed. Is a break to like reassess and collect myself and not have a big like freak out, which I took. I first set up to like do the podcast every 2 weeks, and I started every week, which I accomplished during the pandemic, but lockdown. And then I was like, okay, every 2 weeks. And then that also wasn't working because I deal with mental health issues. So I can't always be consistent, but I could always be dedicated. So I'll focus on dedication and not consistency. Like I'm not a robot. So then I started to produce it as I felt a topic coming through based on my own life experiences. But they're all going well, and I'm glad that I actually like refocus and re-energize my thought pattern with all of the projects I'm doing. I'm also an artist, so that's another project, which I'm working on right now with Bronx Brewery. But refocusing all of that and just making sure to not overwhelm myself so I don't lose passion for it. But no, they're all going pretty great. And thank you guys for also always participating in the podcast whenever I do reach out. I love hearing your stories and your experiences, and you guys definitely add a lot to it.
I'm taking that. I'm not a robot. I'm not a robot. That needs to be another like mantra that I need to just put in a bit more for myself, because that's, yeah. That's definitely still like a regular struggle. But it's truth. Thank you so much for that. Toni, I mean, I know that I know you've been busy this whole summer with Soultry Sisters, because you were back here doing so much. And so I mean, you can please share with like just everything that's happening with Soultry, and now you're back east as well. And so like what's happening next with you even there? I'd love to just like what's the whole journey on that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, so first, I just want to say I resonate with so much what you were saying, Amarachi. I was like snapping. I was just like, I feel that too. And I feel like in this part of my journey, I have been more so, I guess the term I use, like honoring self. And I think, yeah, what you said, like consistency, we're not a robot, and just really like having that intentional time with self to like assess like capacity. That's something I've really had to do this year because this spring I started a full-time job in women's health. So I do a little bit of research, and then I became a birth worker. So I'm in my certification process to become a full spectrum doula. So that's really exciting too. And it kind of fell into my lap through my new job. And so everything is like similar to what Amarachi was saying. It's all really aligned. So even though I am busy or there's a lot of things on my plate, a lot of commitments I have, it all kind of flows together. Like the type of stuff that we do at my full-time job, it helps me with Soultry, and the type of stuff I do through Soultry helps with my job. Like whether that's like my experience doing like communication stuff or my experience doing yoga, like sometimes my work is like, oh, can you help us do these kind of wellness things? So it all is coming together. And so yeah, I am here in DC for at least another like 2 years. And then we'll see after that what happens. But yeah, so I go to California to do like our festival. We're gonna have that like once a year. And then during the winter time, I also go back home. But yeah, DC right now is my temporary home. And so yeah, doing a lot of women's health and wellness, everything that's like holistic wellness is my jam. And in my work too, then one of the areas we talked about is like doula care and like full spectrum doulas, and expanding that in like HBCU campuses. And then also maternal mental health research. So it all kind of flows. And so I'm excited for this part of my journey as well, just seeing where things will go. And I still have been able to manage Soultry as well with it, which I've been super proud of, because my job is remote. So I'm able to still do the different things I need to do with our business, which has been important to me. Like on this part of my journey, I was like, I don't want to have to cut things. Like I do have to manage them, right? But I didn't want to have to like lose that whole part of me. So I'm glad that right now in my journey, I get to have all of that. And like Amarachi was saying, it's just, knowing your capacity and taking time. And I'm working through taking more time for rest, but this summer I had a lot of rest. Like after our festival in June, so Soultry, we had our summer solstice festival, our first ever one, so super exciting. And we were super proud of ourselves, but we also were like, dang, that was a lot. Like we need to rest. So we took the rest of the summer off for the most part, like no public facing events, but we did do some like internal consulting things. But just even having that break was nice because I got to, travel a little bit on the East Coast to see friends. Alyssa, well, no, that was spring, but then she's gonna come here in the fall. And so it was nice to have that break. And so yeah, as fall begins, like Soultry started our programming again. So we just had a mini retreat with the Oceanside Public Library, which that was really fun as well. And so we're hoping to do more things like that for our community. So it's nice to also have this like energetic shift of like excitement. And I think that's why rest is so important, because without that rest, like I definitely would have just been burnt out. But having that rest, and I was able to explore the city more. I've been making connections and things like that, so it's been nice.
It's so exciting to always learn even more about everything you have going on, Toni. Like I'm always just more and more excited about it. So and it really has just been a joy, um, just getting to know you more and participating and getting to be a part of all of the wonderful wellness, and everyone who knows me, at least through Tough Talk, and who knows what I'm doing in my own life, knows that I still, like, say I have my Rapunzel syndrome. I still don't get out much, and I'm very selective about things I do and where I go and whatnot. And being a part of the Summer Solstice Festival, getting to participate was wonderful. And every time I get to be a part of things happening in the Wellness Collective, it's just absolutely great. Um, and even like through August, you also have like Step in Stride challenge going. So if you don't know, just look up some Soultry Step in Stride, y'all, and get with it. It's great. It just helps you stay motivated and moving and grooving and whatnot. Um, yeah, so it's always a joy and a pleasure, and I feel like I could not have two better people for wanting to talk more on this. So let's just like get into all of it, because it all is connected and related anyway. It's not going to be like bullet point questions, but there's so much to even try to talk about with respect to the idea of women's health and wellness, because that goes in so many directions. And you're both already sharing a bit on like your own personal practices with it, and so I'm happy for you to hear more on that idea, as well as just reflecting on the state of this country with everything. And I like try to keep it brief in my own words, because anyone who also knows from these talks is that like I'm so angry at this country. I simply refer to us nowadays as West Ponders, because I don't think we deserve any other name. I don't like calling us Americans, because I believe we may be the worst of the two American continents, and we don't deserve to be the ones just running around saying we're Americans. Like, I think we're the least of Americans, at least the native born of this country, and still just grateful that others give us an acknowledgement of being somewhere to strive for and to be at. Anyhow, I digress. I mean, either of you, I'm more than happy to start us on just how do you feel about where we are, where we're going, and what are the things that you try to focus in on at this point in time? Because there's just so much, whether it's trying to just do something that has a greater national, federal impact and effect, or something that is localized in your own community, or that is more privatized and personal in your family, your close ones, your practice and staying well, and connecting with people who are already connecting with you. It's like I don't even know where to begin on trying to narrow the scope. But both of you have to do this in your journeys, particularly in your own practices as women, and in your professional lives as well. Where do you start, and how do you maintain a sense of capacity and commitment?
I can chime in first, and then Amarachi go for it. But yeah, I say I grapple with this a lot, honestly, because I feel a lot. So it is tough to like see the news and to hear personal stories too from folks in my community of just like just the country not supporting them, other things in their community not supporting them. So it's been tough. But in my personal journey, I feel like in this last 2 years, I've shifted from really looking at like the macro into more thinking like the micro. So I think of like my micro community. So that's especially like our Soultry community. That's like where I live in DC, like the folks that I have around me. Like, remember in the 2020 we had pods. Like, I think of kind of that kind of mentality, and in a way of like that's how I can sustain myself, of like really pouring into others and then being able to receive that support like mutually. Because I think sometimes when I think of macro, it's really hard to see where that change is happening or where like my energy is going. But when I have focused on like my micro community, I can see that, especially with Soultry Sisters, like this summer with our summer solstice festival. Like we got so emotional like during that weekend because we were like, wow, we cultivated this thing. Like with the pandemic, we didn't really know like where Soultry was gonna go, and to see like people show up in person and that maybe haven't even known us yet, but they found the flyer or they saw something online and they were like, this called to me. And that's the feeling that I want people to have. And Alyssa and I actually we're doing our book club on Atlas of the Heart, that book, and it talks about connection and belonging. And we talk about that's kind of at the root of Soultry too, is like cultivating those meaningful connections and creating a sense of belonging. So, and then Soultry Sisters, we also focus on like women of color, and we've expanded. So now all folks are welcome, but that's just kind of, you know, from our experience and our identities, that's kind of where we, you know, create from. But that has been how I have been able to sustain myself. And then in my job, I chose my org specifically because it's a Black women led org. And so I was like, with everything over these last couple of years, I was like, I kind of want to be around folks who just get it. Like, and that's just, you know, for where I was at in my journey. Because prior to that, I was doing more like COVID epidemiology stuff, and that was really hard for my mental health. And then I also was like, I really want to focus on women's health because of just the state of maternal health and all of that in this country. I was just like, I think that's where I was just called to. And I feel like that's where my talents and my gifts can be used. And so it's working out so far. And I think that's what keeps me sane and sustained, is that I can, you know, be around people that like look like me, have a similar background, and might have differences, but like we're all really passionate about similar things. And that helps me think of the micro. Yeah, so I'll get into more of the details and stuff later, but yeah, I'll pass it to Amarachi.
Yeah, similar. Like I'm gonna bounce off of what you said, because as soon as you said micro, I was like, bing, that rings true to how I've been processing in this role too. Trying not to see it as this big scary world, and kind of just making things smaller so that I do have more center and focus, so that I'm able to even pour out to the world and give it what I, you know, the change that I want to see. So like with me, I've definitely, I think maybe since like 2018, I've been on the journey of self, and just really focusing all the energies on me and what I need, what I like, call it self-preservation or whatever. But I definitely wanted to focus on all the things that was happening with me first, both physically and mentally, in order to be able to kind of do what I'm doing now, because I wasn't able to prior to 2018. I wasn't able to come up with Wise Child. I wasn't able to even come up with a podcast, although I know that I could have. But a lot of what I'm doing now is because I was able to focus on myself and my own healing. And through doing that, especially going to therapy, and I've always been kind of like in and out of like physical health anyway. Like I'm a big sports girl. I grew up playing sports all my life, was jogging like almost 7 days a week, and then doing yoga and all these other things and walking. So physical health is very, and also I'm a Virgo, so I'm neurotic for physical health. Like eat right, play right, all, you know, all those things. But making it micro kind of helped me to take on the world differently, to tackle the problems of the world differently, and not with such like anxiety and anger and like passion, but making passion come out in a healing kind of way, where I could serve the world and be of service to the world. But it took me really playing into that micro mentality of things. And then now I'm like in the way of, especially through my job as a nanny too, because I am a lot part of different like intimate moments of people's lives and families especially. That also was a help for me to kind of see what I needed to do in order to pour into a family, whether it's a single mom, and I've worked with a lot of single moms too, and they happen to be Black. And sadly, the Black moms that I worked with have all been single. But that really, through working with them, it kind of refocused what I wanted to do as a child care provider, and a child care specialist and a nanny and all those titles. But it took me definitely focusing on myself first to figure it out, because I knew all of it was here, but because I was dealing with my own things, I couldn't get it out in a way that was productive, or a way that really shined light to what I wanted to do with mental health generally. But yeah, it definitely, yeah, focusing on self really helped me with that.
Thank you both so much on that. Let's keep it on that in terms of focusing on what you can do with the micro, and having that awareness and mindfulness to your communities. We're still in a pandemic. New York has it got, I'm like, this is where it's like my brain starts to get so fried, because it's like, wait, which one is it? Pox? No, polio. Right, that's right, polio in the water. New York has 2022. That there's so many different issues. No one knows when insurrection 2.0 may pop up in the DC area. It's like, with respect to your micro communities as things are and what you're doing in the more immediacy, what would you say are perhaps the most like problematic challenges right now, or the most common challenges that you either see or that you're encountering?
I mean, I do live in New York, so I was to start with that. I do live in New York, but I guess what helps me living in here with all of the scares that we've had is being proactive, because I'm like, no one expected for COVID to kind of go through what it went through. Everyone was just, I guess, paying attention to those who are in quote unquote charge of the country, to kind of take lead. And I guess for me, through that experience of relying on them so much so, and ignoring myself a lot and just looking for them for answers, I was like, you know what, with all of these like monkeypox, polio, all of these disease virus scares, what I'm gonna do differently is limit the access to them and get the news which I need, get the facts that I need in order for me to be proactive on how I self-care, because I don't want to go back to experiencing physically, mentally, emotionally what 2020 did. Even if we were to have another like lockdown, I just didn't want to experience it in the way that I did. So being that was a scare that none of us really expected, I'm learning from that and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. If there's a vaccine that I need to take, I'm going to do my research and decide whether or not to take it. If there's us like having to stay at home again, how am I going to do home differently this time to the unexpected situation of 2020? So for me, like what was always ringing in my mind as of late really is just proactive. Get the information I need, release the information that I don't, that's kind of just that's causing me to not be balanced and healthy, and take in what I need to know what to do to help myself, So always going back to, okay, thanks for information, and then going back to let's center, let's focus, and with the information that I do my research on, I'll help the community, I'll help my close friends, I'll help my family. Like, oh guys, this is what I found out. This is what you could do. Don't pay attention to the media all the time, because they will drive you in a little bit like wild. So like just learning from the past in order to kind of move on to my own future. That's kind of how I'm handling all of these like stressors and sensories and overstimulated news of the scare. And also just accepting the what ifs, being that, okay, if we have this option of, for one, the world closing down again, what would I do? How am I going to feel? How do I think I'm going to feel? And then I move forward. So proactive is really like the space I'm being in right now. Even generally in my own life, even with my own physical health as a woman getting older in age, I'm just being a lot more proactive about the things that I do, especially concerning self-care and physical and mental health. I was proactive in 2018 by getting a therapist. I'm like, all right, let's do the work. So, so following the lead that I've been doing that has been keeping me balanced enough or at least more balanced than I've ever been in my life, you know. So just following that, really, that's kind of the zone I'm in right now.
I want to thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing. I want to keep it on New York for a moment, because I love all of that you're saying, and I'm a Jersey boy, so New York was Philly was my first big city, and then New York was my second big city. I still don't even know if I consider San Diego a big city. It's a different thing. Um, um, but I love all of that, and really it's like proactive. I think that's another, like, that's gonna sit with me. um I wanted to say, I guess, like, to be fair, that it's like, I know, even being out here in San Diego, I was right there with many others, feeling that, like, Governor Cuomo at the time was the guiding light to trust through everything of 20. I was in the pocket of feeling like this one's on the level, until it was clear that there were other things afoot, as often is the case with a lot of politicians. And I always do have a mindfulness to New York, because it's always meant a lot to me. Um, and it's been through a lot of upheaval. Eric Adams has been, I think, interesting to everyone. I don't think he's been quite anything that anyone expected from any side or any perspective of it. And even just, the kind of the back and forth with gun legislation in New York, from the Supreme Court back to the governor. I forget her name, Madam Governor, right now. Um, that proactive, I think, is just, that's so important, especially to New York lifestyle, but really, it's a great way for all of us to remember it. So I appreciate that. And I mean, I will press it, which you can always just say pass on, to the more, not just political, because it's not political, let's just say nationwide, because that's what it is, nationwide fundamental challenges of women's health and wellness. I mean, I think that, like, New York is going to be one of the first places to be, an absolute safe haven if, someone's trying to turn this into Gilead, as they say. So I have no doubt about that for a place like New York. Um, but even just with, like, overall safety, as it is, um, I mean, we're living in a time when extreme behavior is so regularly occurring. There's a different kind of conditioning about extreme behavior, and New York is often a target, as we've seen, be it in the heart of Times Square, or it be in the smallest of black suburbs. That extreme behavior certainly can be a challenge. Um, have you found any impact for yourself on that, or had any reflections on those avenues as they are?
I mean, I guess, I mean, I have, but also because I've grown up in a neighborhood that was, I sad to say, but I grew up in an environment that was high key on violence anyway, gang related violence in my high school. And but it's really sad to say, but those things prepared me, or like, I've taken notes of those things. They're preparing me for whatever might happen. And even my recent episode in the podcast, I was speaking to a fellow New Yorker who's a Black man, and we both, like, touched on a culture in New York that keeps you on alert all the time. It's so dense. It's a lot of people, and a lot of people in closed spaces, especially the subway. And that's the everyday thing for those who don't drive. And even for those who do drive, you still have to kind of take the subway somewhere, because you don't always want to drive around New York City, because that's another like trigger, or at least like a nervous system shakeup, But a lot of the culture in New York, in a sense, kind of prepares you for danger, because you're always peering for something, for the shoe to drop or something.
Mhm.
You're always, if someone is standing too close to you on a train, you're already like, okay, like, your body is already ready to defend itself, you know? So I guess you could kind of see that as an advantage or a disadvantage, because no one should be raised in an environment that their nervous system is always highly on trigger. You know, no one should. It's not healthy. And that's why for me, I always go back to like, take care of yourself because these streets, take care of yourself because these streets, and always prepare. Even before I leave the house, I have to prepare my mind and my body for what could possibly happen. It's not healthy, but at the same time, I see the benefit of going back to the word I use, being proactive, because I'm like, okay, just in case something pops off, what's gonna happen? How am I gonna handle it? How am I gonna, you know, what do I want to do in these situations, you know? Especially as a Black woman, as a woman in general, just walking in different neighborhoods, I always have to kind of keep that and be cautious and keep that in the back of my mind. I don't really let it affect the way I move in the world, but it is always there, just in case. It's always the, all right, just in case something does happen, how are you gonna handle it, Amarachi? You know, so that my mind is kind of like, all right, I could push that in the back and then focus on what's, you know, pretty much reducing my anxiety to something that's unexpected, you know? So in a sense, growing up in this city, in the town that I grew up in Bronx, really, it has kind of prepared me. I don't want to say war, because I don't want to take away from actual war, because that's another experience that I don't think anyone should ever experience in life. But it's a state of the, you know, the government, the country, and the global. But yeah, it prepares me for that. But it's also, I would give credit to the way my mind works. I don't have control of my mind really, but I would give credit to how it kind of compartmentalizes a lot of things. Because that also helped me even within the family. If we really want to go really micro, it helped me even within the family, being a Black woman, the youngest in my family. It also helped me kind of prepare for the world in a sense. But yeah, I mean, with the government, I've learned this year to distance myself from a lot of what they're doing. I think recently, I'm on Twitter, so like recently, I tweeted that politics is not real life experience. That's a sector of it. The rest of the world has its own thing going on. Politics is a little droplet of that. And if we center and make that our entirety, we'll always lose ourselves and lose direction. So this year I've worked on limiting the information I get from that drama over there but of course keeping my eye out, because they do control a lot of the things that we are socialized to use and see as comfort. They control that, but then knowing that I also have an option of opting out of it and opting out of the socialized world, that's also what I do too. Like, I'm like, I have an option not to live like this because politics is one thing. So long as I follow protocol or the law or whatever, I can navigate the world in a totally different way that doesn't have to center working, making money, capitalism, really. So I always know that I have an option to not center capitalism in my living life, you know, whatever that might look like for me, with all the privileges that I have too. But just kind of, I'm in the zone of kind of like compartmentalizing a lot while still being present, because my goal is to be present. I don't want to be lost in the past and then lost in the future. I just want to be here, but I also want to honor both because they do matter. But that's kind of where I am when it comes down to the political things that are going on and just the general day-to-day life.
This is why I love getting to talk with you because it's always so it's nourishment from the soul and my mind every time. Like, thank you so much for all of that, Amarachi. Thank you for sharing, and thank you again for being here on all of it. Politics is not the center of our lives. It's not the real life we're dealing with on the day to day. And politics and following, like I said, protocols and laws are two separate things. And I'm gonna watch this video so many times. Thank you for all of that. We're gonna kick it south to DC with Toni. on, you know, all of that. But we'll start it like back at the beginning kind of thing, right? Roll it back of just like how are you managing the different things that you have to face, the challenges that you're seeing, um, that are most at the forefront, you know, with respect to your micro and your communities in health and wellness.
Yeah, I think similar to what Amarachi was saying, of just like finding that balance too, and yeah, kind of focusing on being present. Like that's also really been a big intention for me, and like something I've been seeing in my community, whether that's like in San Diego with Soultry or here in the DC area, is like um, people wanting, like craving that rest, that stillness. Because now, like since last year when things went back to quote unquote normal, right? Like restaurants are open, people are going back in person for work, like all these things. And but we haven't really had the time collectively to grieve or to process everything that has been happening since 2020, and it just piles up, piles up, piles up, right? Like I'm type person that like, yeah, I have to compartmentalize like Amarachi, because it's like, okay, if I think about climate change, the world is spinning faster, like that is crazy. In my small groups of friends, I'm like, why are we not talking about this? And then there's, you know, when we talk about you know, yeah, like politics in the government, like why are they not supporting us in these ways? And then when it comes to like women's health issues, like why are we, yeah, going back to crazy times? But yeah, so what helps center me is thinking about, okay, being present, like what can I do? So yeah, I really do focus on like my micro community, and something I've been seeing is just, yeah, that need for soul care. So like with Soultry, we define that as like mind, body, soul, and community care, and well-being. And even like, and now I'm in the birth work space, like even birth workers are like, you know, we support these families, we support these birthing folks, but like who supports us? And I was like, see, this is what I do, because, you know, everyone needs support. And I think sometimes, right, like, especially as Black women, especially as people of color, we carry those things, and sometimes we wear it as like a badge of honor that like, oh, I've been through all these things, like have all these traumas, but I got through it. But it's like, but did you actually like go through it, or are you just like, you know, putting it to the side? And so that's kind of like my journey now. Like I'm also in therapy and stuff, and it's to actually like process it, to move through this stuff and not just hide it under the rug or like expect it to evaporate or something. And like specifically with like reproductive health rights, like something I'm kind of moving towards is kind of like herbal remedies. Like I've been in a couple herbal courses this past like 2 years, and currently I'm in one for like herbal medicine for birth support. And a part of that is like, you know, herbs to help if, you know, you don't want to carry the pregnancy to term. And so I think things like that, like going back to the root of like our cultures, and like, you know, before there was like tradition, like Western medicine, our traditional cultures have been doing these things. So that's something I've been curious about and leaning into, to, I guess, kind of like empower myself to feel that like, okay, if the government or these other powers are trying to, you know, take away, you know, my health and well-being, like what can I do? So that's kind of what I've been leaning into. And I just like being in nature more. Like that's something I've learned from 2020 and beyond, is that like when I'm in nature, things are good. Like, so I try to go for a walk every day. Like I did a walk like an hour before this call. I try to go on hikes, just like picnics, just like be out and just like hear the birds, notice the butterflies. And that really helps center me. And even though there's all these other things happening, keeps me grounded and keeps me like keep going and what I'm passionate about. But yeah, it's tough. But yeah, that's something I've really been centering, is like my own soul care. And I think of like, once I take care of myself, then I can better show up for like the other people in my life or my community. And that's not what I was doing in 2020. Like I also, like Amarachi shared, like I was going through a lot, like physically, mentally. And I also am like, I don't want to go back there. Like I've seen the light, I've seen this life of lightness, like of ease, of contentment, happiness. And it's, yeah, not based on capitalism stuff. It's not based on like what I'm doing, how much of things I can accomplish or produce. Like I'm just like, this is fine. Like even in my current role, like, I mean, I hope they're not watching this, but sometimes I'm just like, I need a mental health day. Like, and so I'm just, you know, like I'll do what I need to do, but like I need to take care of myself. So that's something that I prioritize. Like, even though I wear these different hats, it's like I can't keep doing that if like Tony's not okay. So yeah, I really focusing on self, focusing on care, really, I think is the word too that's been coming up for me.
I learn, I learn and learn and learn from both of you so much, and I love it. And I think I would particularly can also say that I think my return to a love for nature came through doing a lot of the sultry wellness and getting back out with like step and strides and realizing like how much I love just like taking in nature. And that's like one of my daily digest things is every morning, like my partner and the dogs know I need at least 20 minutes on my patio with just the canyon and the birds and the air, and I get the fountain going, so there's just a little sound of the water trickling, and it's like, this is how I need to start every day. If I'm not starting the day that way, like, get out of my way. It's going to be a warpath, you know? So I certainly got back into some of that wellness as well. Um, I would love to know more of what drew you to. Although I feel like I'm understanding some of it, but even just more about like what drew you to focusing towards your work as a doula. Like I just think it's so beautiful and brilliant, and as someone who does like overdose on the news of everything and keeps up with every terrible statistic, including just the awful challenges and mortality rates, especially amongst Black women with birth. I love hearing that so much. So I would just love to know more about that for your journey.
Yeah, so it kind of came to me, like I wasn't searching for it. Like actually what my spirit guides apparently like when I had a tarot reading, they were like, you are doing enough, like stop getting these certifications. But then I was like, but my work wants me to be a doula. So it came to me. But yeah, so my current role, like we're doing a doula training program on HBCU campuses. So then my team was like, well, you should probably, understand this for yourself as well if you want to help facilitate and things. So that worked out. So of course they, paid for it. So that was nice. But also was just in alignment of everything I do, right? Like I do yoga. So now I'm like, ooh, I can focus on like prenatal, postnatal yoga and breath work for families. And then with Soultry, we do soul care. So that's also, I feel like, again, a thing that like doula support, families. So through mind, body, spirit support. So I think all of that was in alignment. And so my certification is in a full spectrum doula program. So that's preconception. So even before you get pregnant. So thinking about, how you can maintain and like sustain your health and well-being. So if you choose to start a family, then your body's like at a better place. So not having like chronic conditions and stuff. And then during pregnancy, of course, we support birth, labor, which is the most popular doula is like a birth doula. So of course, being there when the babies are born and stuff, which is a magical and sacred time. And then there's also postpartum doulas, which is really important, especially with the state in the US. So most women actually die postpartum. So that's up to 1 year after they give birth. So I think it's kind of like a missed opportunity to support folks. Because I think, with society, birthing people are just, again, just like, okay, you had a baby. Okay, you need to go to work in a couple weeks. You need to keep doing your things. Then the birthing person usually is also doing other household stuff, or then especially if it's Black women, like being the financial caretakers for their home and stuff. So there's just a lot that goes into it. So knowing all of that context, when it came to me, I was like, yes, I need to do this. And everything has kind of been falling into place and meeting other folks who are doulas. Like I had close friends who are doulas, but for some reason I never thought to do it before. But at this point in my journey, it makes sense. And with my tarot reading too, she was like, you do something with children? Or she's like, you have children? I was like, I am a doula. So like everything is just kind of in alignment. And I think my herbalism journey is also something that fits in the doula work because I want to be able to support families with herbal remedies, with natural foods and things like that. And then also like my specific thing I want to do is support queer families, well, all families, but especially emphasis on queer families, because I think that's also not really like talked about. And yeah, so I think, yeah, it all makes sense to me when I think about my journey. I think for folks, they're like, dang, you do so much. But again, it's that alignment. And I feel like it was just called to me at the right time. So yeah, I'm excited to continue this path. And it's so necessary to, and I just want to say this, that like, yes, I'm getting certified to be a doula, but honestly, like my philosophy is that anyone has a capacity to be a doula. It's just being a support person. It's like, if you go to your friends, and there's different types of doulas too. It's not all related to birth and children and families. You could be an abortion doula, you could be a death doula, you could be a sexuality doula, but essentially just a support person. So someone who's there to like kind of give education, give some information, give a back rub, you know, go to your house, clean your dishes for you if you're busy, like whatever that is. So also in my work that we're doing at the org I work with is kind of shifting the narrative of doula work. So it's not necessarily have to be some outside person coming into your home or coming into your community. It's more so creating that those people who know this work, who then go out to their micro communities and do that. So it's more, that's why we're starting at college campuses too, because it's just like, okay, you might have friends who are getting pregnant right now, or you might have friends who, you know, don't want to, but when that time comes, you're gonna be like, hey, my best friend, I'm a doula, like, let me go be with her or be with them, you know. So that's something that we also are trying to promote too, that you don't have to necessarily have a certification. This is just something that can be a path, but for the most part, we all have it innately, right? Like when your loved ones are sick, you go bring them soup. That's kind of like a doula too. Yeah.
I love that. You said shifting the narrative and like demystifying what a doula can be and who a doula can be. That's so fantastic. Um, you know, with respect to DC, it's not quite a state, and so I am also not necessarily even sure on like how how if for lack of better wording, it's like how red or blue are things in DC these days, and I mean, how do you know confront potential challenges that like insurrection 2.0 could happen at any point in time kind of thing.
Yeah, it is. It's really challenging. I mean, nowadays it's kind of more quiet, like that type of you know, energy is more quiet. But then sometimes we complain because like it's crickets, because it's like, okay, now the other side of it, like Biden and Kamala, what are y'all doing? So like it's a little, I guess, maybe too quiet right now for the changes that we would like. But I feel like in the DC community, people are very vocal. People are very like aware of what's going on, and aware of the community. And there's a lot of like community-based orgs and stuff. Well, at least the communities I'm a part of. There's a lot of people just like doing it for themselves, right? They're not waiting for statehood. They're not waiting for sovereignty, even though it should rightfully so be that way. But they're doing a lot of things on their own, which is like, on one hand, it's great, right? Because they're solving the problems themselves. But then on the other hand, it's kind of unfortunate because they don't always get the same funding and things because they're not a state. So it is really tricky here. And yeah, I feel like the morale also kind of wavers depending. But I think right now it is kind of well, maternal health specifically, there is a little bit more ramping up of like those fundings for programs. Like the mayor here, Mayor Bowser, just had a summit for maternal and infant health 2 weeks ago, and I went to that. And I guess she's been doing it for a couple of years, and so it's just interesting to see like what's going on in the community, what they're doing. And then actually in New York City, yeah, Mayor Adams had this new initiative that's like funding doula organization, like nonprofit doula organizations, to provide free services to low income families in a couple boroughs in New York City. So you can look that up. But that's something that, you know, other cities, I hope, models and stuff with like different, you know, city funding, state funding to funnel to like things that actually need help, not police, not whatever else they put it into private football coach, whatever. I don't know what was going on with that. But yeah, so not to digress with current events, but yeah, I think, yeah, in DC, I think for the most part, people are creating that change they want to see. Again, I'm a transplant here. I'm not from the city, so I was like, say that too. Like, I also don't have the like live my whole life here experience. I've only been here for 3 years, so it's really limited in what I know.
Oh, but that was super informative, and just so many wonderful things to hear about. I mean, great to know that like Mayor Bowser has those initiatives as well. So it was like that's super cool to hear. Anything that goes back to Mayor Eric, expect the unexpected Adams always gets me. And then otherwise I simply say Mississippi, goddamn. Um, uh, I'm gonna kick it back to you, Amarachi. I'm curious about going from, because obviously, like, yes, health and wellness and mental health especially has been a part of all of your practices. Um, you know, going from podcast to and childcare to full-on life coaching. Are there any common, utterly common occurrences, and it's like, ooh, doesn't seem to matter what age you are, where you are in that path, like this may be a challenge that you've encountered?
Yes. Well, my life coaching is centered around relational life coaching. So relationships and not just romantic. All I feel like all forms of relationships intertwine a lot. They all overlap. One could lead to other, to other, to other. A parent and child relationship could lead to someone who is a parent and who is wanting to have a child. They have to figure out how to relate different to this new being in the house. So it all kind of flows, and it is because I started the life coaching mainly because of my childcare. One, because of my own experience as a child growing up in a very strict environment, or environment that didn't really relate to who I was. From that experience, I kind of poured into my childcare business, which is, helping to raise children differently as well, and having a relationship with children is different to the one I'm used to seeing around, because I didn't really accept it or like it. So it kind of intertwines with that. And then while working with these families and closely, especially with parents, I was like, okay, some of these relationships in this house is not good for the child. So how can I get in front of it? I'm always like, how can I get in front of the problem to lessen the problem from ever existing again? I mean, it's not gonna disappear completely, but at least less of these kind of toxic environments, the better for me. So that's kind of how I fell into creating my life coaching. And I also my focus in psychology was child psychology at first. I started with that, and learning about lifespan and what the brain does, and how your environment, that nature nurture conversation, which I'm like, they all are affecting one another. But depending on the environment you grew up in, if a child didn't grow up with parents, nurture is a lot more impactful. They're not going to lean a lot with nature. And if you grow up in a family, then of course you have both. You have a balance of both. But I've always thought to always go back to the self, even as a child, and self-autonomy is really important to me. And it starts, if you didn't learn it as a child, as an adult, you have to kind of learn that, because that's really important, to be able to kind of have a lot more control of the things that happen to you, or how to even handle the things that happen to you. So it all aligns in a way, or at least almost, from my experience of seeing how similar to you, Toni. I'm like, it makes sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else, but all the things align to me. And I want to, because I just started the life coaching, so I'm still trying to navigate what to center it around, or who my demographic is. And because I work with families, and I've worked with single moms, and I've seen how raising a child is hard for them to handle a lot of the time, because they don't have the extra hand to help them. I definitely want to focus on working with single mothers, especially single mothers, in my community who can't really afford childcare, you know, and because being a childcare person, that's my main source of income, I can't provide childcare for them, but what else can I provide to them? Based on their, you know, price range. I could always provide mental health support for them, you know? So that's kind of why I started it, because I'm like, I'm seeing these moms really struggle, and more so I kind of want to, I'm a deconstructor. So I want to deconstruct their entire mentality when it comes down to childcare, and their entire mentality when it comes down to single motherhood, their entire mentality when it comes down to women who live in this country. I just want to completely deconstruct it and have them rebuild themselves from the beginning, like pretty much rebirth and reparent, and, you know, raise themselves solely outside of the scope of societal norms. You know, that's kind of where that's my focus with this life coaching, because that helped me in being stable in who I am right now. And I kind of feel like, and also seeing other people in my life who have been going through healing and self-healing and reparenting themselves, I just saw like a bulb kind of rung and said, it starts with you. It starts with the self. So why are we focused on everyone else and trying to control how everyone else is moving? Control you. Focus on you. You know, once you have that down and you're solid, the rest will kind of swim by easily. You know, you'll kind of see it even before it gets to you. If you see a problem, be like, oh, okay, bye. You know, or okay, come over here. I can handle this today. So that's kind of where my passion stands with all that I do. And I try to instill that in the children I take care of too. You know, like my selling point with nannying is I favor behavioral things. Like I have a cognitive behavioral certificate. So I like to focus on that because I feel like a lot of parents have a hard time with their children's natural behavior because of how we're socialized to see it as like they're bad, or, you know, because they're exercising autonomy and they're exercising independence. I want to deconstruct that mentality and to kind of help them see the gift that their children are, because you want a child and you want an adult who speaks up for themselves. You want, you know, you want this, especially and if you even like fast forward it, a child speaking up to you and saying autonomy could speak up to quote unquote bullies in their school and also stand up to the government. So let's raise children who have voice, children who have power, children who could actually stand strong in their conviction, you know. So that's how it flows to me. Like start with self first. And I was writing down, I was like, when Toni said micro, I was writing down, I was like, for me, the way I see it is micro is self, close people, community, and then the world. So it starts like that. Start with yourself, then give your share, pour yourself or pour things into your close friends. And then with that, express everyone kind of like the butterfly effect. Everyone will kind of pour into everyone else. And then it's a whole effect that could possibly change the entire world that we see today. So that's the way my mind works. Welcome to my head, guys. But that's the way my mind works.
It's the best space to be. You know, if if I cared for capitalism, I'd consider putting this episode behind a paywall because I feel like we're all getting the best life lessons from the both of you. But as both of y'all know, and anyone who's a friend of Tough Talk knows, I hate capitalism. I'm ready for it all to collapse. So this will be another invaluable, virtuous free episode on our YouTube playlist. Oh my gosh, just thank you for that. It is all connected, and it's so true. You know, we still don't have enough um, conscientious pouring in to others who can pour back into us in this world. And it's not like it's a new idea, but for some reason, you know, that still continues to be, I think, a daily challenge for most of the population in having that mindfulness. And I mean, I know I'm definitely like recalibrating again from both of you on like pay more attention to my micro and stop losing myself so much in the focus of the macro. I think I forgot that that's what I was starting to slip back into, particularly over these like last couple of months. I feel like I've just been like waking up every day and seeing a giant canvas of impending doom, just like more and more filled in. I'm like, all right, let me try and like get through this, and it's like I need to let go of that hold of a view and that perspective, and really bring it back to reflecting on just what's not necessarily just more immediate, but more already within view, and within grasp in that sense, and keep on keeping on from there, as opposed to just terror and doom. You know, this has just been so wonderful, and we've been going for a while, which is great. So I'm gonna kind of like sort of wrap us up with a couple of just the like opening it up, spitfire of what else is going on in the world that you're paying attention to. Any great shows or books? I know someone's got like a book club thing going. In terms of that, or I don't know if you've got another gallery showing coming up, Amarachi, but it's like what else is happening in both of y'all's worlds and micros as they are.
Yeah, this has been such a great conversation and much needed. Like, I just love these kind of connections and conversations and discussion. I just love this. So I'm feeling really fulfilled. So thank you all for this space. But yeah, like recently I was telling someone if I could just get paid to read books and talk about it, I would. So I'm reading like a couple of books simultaneously right now, but the main one that Soultry's been talking about is Atlas of the Heart. So that's really talking about like connection and belonging and exploring 87 different emotions. So it's really been giving me language, which I really appreciate too, because especially with everything going on with 2020 and beyond, like to have language for me to like pause and be like, okay, I'm feeling this, or I think I'm feeling this, has been powerful for my journey. And then I'm rereading All About Love, and it's Bell Hook's birthday just a couple of days ago. So I feel like it was just really timely. So I think, especially with those two books, just thinking about like love, connection, heart space has been really like my journey right now. And then in my personal life, just exploring love and things like that a little more deeply as well. And so that has also been helpful with processing the world. It's just like, okay, focusing on these beautiful feelings and this like warmth and connection that I have in my life. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And then in the Soultry space, of course, we have like our Step and Stride walking challenge that BJ has been talking about. So we call it a challenge, but essentially, like if you just want to join, like to just have a space to like walk or to inspire you to walk around your neighborhood, like I've noticed the leaves and flowers a lot more because of the challenge. Like we've been doing it for a year now, or I guess since the beginning of this year, but I personally have been walking around my neighborhood for a year. And with the seasons changing too, I notice that more and I have a deeper appreciation of life. So that's been something I really enjoy doing. And yeah, we have a bunch of different things. So just sign up for our newsletter, like our email list. That's the easiest way to know. Oh, this Sunday, I'm teaching a virtual yoga class for Soultry for our Soul Flow series. So that's something to look forward to. I'll be, the theme is kind of, grounding down, easing into this new season. And yeah, stay tuned for my doula services and things like that. And I was just thinking when Amarachi was sharing, I just was reminded, I was like, oh, I wish we were in the same city because I think what we're doing, it'd be so aligned. So we'll make that work in the ways we can. But I was just like, there's so much alignment here. So again, I just really enjoy this conversation. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but essentially just sign up or check out soultrysisters.com, our website, and it has all the things we're doing there. So yeah.
Perfect. That was perfect. Yeah, I was gonna say just like, and where can they find you?
Yes.
Soultrysisters.com. Right there.
Yes.
It'll connect
Thank
you to
you.
everything they've got going on, also on IG and Facebook. And yeah. Amarachi, to you.
Right now, like I just ordered this book called, I don't know if you can see the name.
Oh my God, I love it. How to heal
Yeah.
toxic thoughts.
Yes. because what I've been working on in therapy is getting out of a space of rumination, because that affects a lot of my my depression. So how to get out of that space. So I've been working on that for about a couple of months now. So I saw this book because I follow a tarot reader on YouTube, and she was reading this, and I was like, oh my god, like I have to get this, because these toxic thoughts are the reason why half of my life was hell for me. But um so I'm reading that. As far as television, I kind of keep it fun and loose with like reality shows, but that's my guilty pleasure. And I'm a tweet and watch girl, so I'm like tweeting and watching, you know. So that also helps me kind of like just get a lot of my stuff out too. Of course, not in a violence way, but at least as far as me using my voice and asserting my thoughts and the way that I think, and also pouring it out into the world as well. Because I
What
do always.
what are you
I
tweeting
do.
and watching? I want to know which shows. Like, what are you tweeting and watching?
Almost, I don't know if it's all of them, but a lot of the reality show, like the Real Housewives, the Teen Moms, and you know, like I love all of them. They're so fun. So I've always tweeting, watching, analyzing those women and the girls, and using my psychologist mind, and like, you know, saying, oh, this girl needs therapy, or you know, whatever. So I do that for fun. Definitely I've always been a walker, and that's also how I calm myself anyway. Like if I get into an argument with someone, I need to walk. I need to walk just to calm down. So I've always done that. And similar to you, Toni, I walk around the neighborhood. I'm grateful that I live very close to different hike paths in the Bronx. I'm very up north. So I always take advantage of that. As far as like my projects that I'm doing, I'm stepping into a season 4 of my podcast. I have short seasons, so I step into that. I'm stepping into that now, so I'm gonna give myself at least until December to kind of game plan what I want to do with it next and what I want to focus on. I've been on a path. The last episode was speaking to a Black man about his mental health, and I kind of want to see if I could get maybe 3 to 4 Black men to kind of get on my podcast to speak about this, about their way and dealing with their experience in the world and how that affects their mental health. So that's my idea right now. I just have to work it out for season 4. And as an artist, I'm working with Bronx Brewery. I have like a public art initiative that I have to do with them. So hopefully that gets done and completed by the end of this month, which is like my first public art initiative. I normally just do like gallery stuff. I don't do like murals and all that, but I want to step into that in the art. I want to step into that in my artist career. And I'm still a nanny. I have a new family right now, and they're wonderful, and they're very much in alignment. And the nanny experience for me is still growing. I also have a newborn care, so I'm right there with you with doula. Yeah, so we do have to talk, Toni. We definitely have to talk. I'm right there with, like, I come right after the doulas go to kind of help the family situate and help them sleep train and, you know, all that things. So I was glad to do that with my last family, which helped me with that experience in it. But I mean, a lot is going on. I'm gonna do it, I guess. I'm gonna find a way to get it done, because I do love what I'm doing, and it motivates me, it helps me, it keeps me up, you know, it keeps my spirit up to do all these things and to do what I want to do in the way that I'm doing it. I'm falling more in love with the life that I've curated for myself. And I have my friendships and my family ships, and all of that is what it is, and it's good because I'm good. So, but yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm mainly on my artist page, but you can find me on ArtX Amarachi, or just, you know, even Google search Secure Life Coach, and you'll probably see my page, my Instagram page pop up for that. And then everything is linked on, they're all linked on each other. So either one, you won't lose, you will find me.
You will be found. Oh my gosh. I mean, both of you are just you're simply the best. You are wonderful queens running this world as you should be. And honestly, it's like every time that I get to connect with both of you, it's just more light, more joy, more love, more wellness that you are putting into this world, that you are pouring into this world, and that the world is pouring back into your lives. And I'm so grateful that you pour that into me and my life, and that you bring that to our Zoom where it happens in our Tough Talk community, as well. And yeah, all of these things will also be linked through the Tough Talk platform and put into the comments on our YouTube playlist so that you can access everything from Secure Life Coaching to Soultry Sisters, as well as more about Wise Child Cares and Life by Amarachi podcast, through all of that. Just thank you both so much for making time to be a part of this in our Zoom where it happens. Thank you to all who are watching. Thank you to those who have joined us as well in our Zoom where it happens. Shout out to my friend Catherine, who I got to work with in Fringe Fest this year, as well as Abby, who was with us earlier, another regular friend of our Tough Talk community. Um, we will keep on keeping on as we always do, with more conversations happening in our Zoom where it happens, and it's going to be great to have you both back as well, in